This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all the top news in the world of sports. I am Ben.
I am Alex. That was a sweet intro.
Thank you, my friend. And we are here on a Monday, leading you out of the weekend and into, at least for the most part, most of your start of your work week.
Yeah, it is Monday the 24th. We're currently here. It's early.
Okay.
It's not a bad thing.
We are a week from Halloween.
Yeah, we are.
Should we dress up?
To come here to work?
Yes.
For just you and I to see each
Just
other?
you and I to see.
Maybe. It depends. Is it a group costume? Like, would one work?
Like, one of us is Batman, one of us is Robin, something like that.
I think we both know which would be which.
Yeah, I would definitely be Batman.
I would be Batman also. And if we had to choose, then we would just be both Catwoman.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll be like Poison Ivy.
I'll be Commissioner Gordon. Just wear a bowler hat. And
grow your mustache.
I'll shave everything but my mustache for that day. I'll be like the worst mustache Jim Gordon ever. He has, that's like a Tom Selleck Jim mustache.
You get like a Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, it's that level, and I'm sitting at like when Ricky Fowler had his mustache.
Oh, not that bad.
No, it's better.
Don't cut yourself too short, my friend.
Very
but
true.
No, so we are here on the 24th, as you mentioned. We're going to be talking about the NFL Week 7 in our first segment, as well as previewing Monday Night Football between the Broncos and the Texans. We have the return of Brock Osweiler to Mile High.
Have you seen that commercial yet?
Yes.
The one where they're playing Third Eye Blind?
Yes, and I do expect him to get booed tonight.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I would too, seeing as, they weren't going to give him the money he got with the Texans, but they were going to give him what they thought he deserved, and I think he probably deserved that more than he deserves what he's getting right now with Houston. But he was kind of unceremonious of him. So yeah, you think they give him a Super Bowl ring today or something? Do you think he's gotten that yet?
I'm not sure really, because they give that out like opening night, but he's been gone, so I'm sure they probably are going to give it to him tonight, as opposed to just like mailing it to him, So, but
just
we'll
leave
obviously
it in his locker with like
I really don't know.
Foam middle finger.
They put it on that and he has to like pull it off.
Here you go, Brock.
But then we'll talk about NFL in segment 1. Segment 2, we're going to talk about the World Series. On Saturday, we had game number 6 of the NLCS, and we did have the Cubs beating the Dodgers in that game. So we're going to recap that game, as well as obviously you're going to be previewing game 1 of the World Series tomorrow, Alex, on the show.
Yes, I am.
So we won't get too deep into that, but still we have to talk about the World Series. A lot of great storylines. A lot of years in between World Series for both of these teams. Obviously, we know about the Cubs, but the Indians as well.
Let alone appearances in general.
Exactly. So we'll talk about baseball in segment 2, and we will end the show today talking about the weekend that was in college football. We had a big upset in the top 25 that affected the rankings, as well as another team who just kind of on that downward slope the last few weeks with a couple losses now in Houston. So talk about the updated top 25 poll and what it means for some of these teams as we push towards that college football playoff. So
yeah, it's getting down to the nitty-gritty.
So with that being said, let's talk about the NFL. Obviously, we had our first game of the day yesterday in beautiful London, and the Giants.
It's a different stadium that they played. They haven't played in this one before.
Yeah, they did not play in Wembley yesterday, so
yeah, it was definitely a different stadium. I will find the name of it in a moment.
Yeah, so while Alex looks for that, I'll talk a little bit about the game. We had the Giants winning just really an ugly game, 17-10.
Twickenham Stadium. It's a different stadium. This one is actually kind of open as opposed to Wembley. It's smaller than Wembley too. They got a little bit of a wind coming in there.
There you go. I like that.
Thanks.
I like the analyst.
Thanks.
So we have the Giants coming out on top 17-10 in this game. Case Keenum played pretty bad. He threw a pick 6 as well. Is it time to turn to Jared Goff?
Well, see, his thing is he threw those picks weren't 100% him because let's say this one. The first one definitely was a bit of Tavon Austin's fault. didn't really catch that kind of deal. Went up, and it was a beautiful pick six by I can't think of his name right now. Their safety from Alabama a couple years
Landon
ago.
Collins.
Landon Collins. I saw it right when you said it. Landon Collins. He actually logged 2 of Case Keenum's 4 interceptions. His problem is he throws into too tight of windows. You can't do that because there's much more room for some kind of problem there. Yeah, I personally would have turned to Keenum for sure after this game. Jeff Fisher has said he would make changes to his receivers before he would make changes to the quarterback position, which I don't really understand there. I don't know if it's a pride thing, like he doesn't want to look absolutely wrong about it. But I certainly would. I mean, you're 3-4 right now. You're heading to your annual 8-8, 7-9 record, under Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher became the third coach in NFL history to lose 200 games, I think it was. Excuse me. So, I mean, there's a lot to look at with that team, and they need to definitely look at every position, not just the quarterback position.
And they are on a bye week next week, so they would have 2 weeks to get Jared Goff ready if that were the case. Rams on a 3-game losing streak, now sitting at 3-4. Mm-hmm. I mean, I realize Case Keenum is not your future. I think what you have to ask yourself is, you did not start Jared Goff at the beginning of the year because he, quote, was not ready.
Yeah.
Has he made that jump in 7-8 weeks?
Yeah.
If you think the answer is yes, then I say put him in. If you still think the answer is no, then I still say no. If he's not ready, then don't put him out there. If you think he's ready, then put him out there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't rush him out there because, Case Keenum's absolutely playing terrible. So.
Yeah, if he's ready, I think you put him out there, and I think there's look at a couple of things. They said, for one thing, with the bye week, the young guys will get a lot of reps, so you could assume Goff will get a lot of reps. But I also wonder if eventually it'll become a front office thing where, like, listen, we traded all this for him. He's our number one pick. He's the money grab. He's what people want to come see. Put him in. You know what I mean? So we'll have to see if it gets to that point also.
Definitely. All right, so moving on, we had the Kansas City Chiefs beating the New Orleans Saints 27-21. Another big day by Spencer Ware. He's proving a lot of worth to that Kansas City backfield.
Yeah, and despite all of Drew Brees' best efforts, 367-3, they did not come away with that win. And 77 yards for Spencer Ware. He also had a very long touchdown screen reception as well from the wide receiver position.
So the Colts finally get off the schneid and beat the Tennessee Titans 34-26. Andrew Luck goes for 353 and 3 scores. Yeah. Tennessee just, even with Mariota, just still cannot win at home. Two home wins in his career.
Yeah, he played well.
Played pretty good. But
DeMarco Murray, 107 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Luck led the way, 353, like you said. 133 of those went to T.Y. Hilton. One of his 3 touchdowns as well went to T.Y. So definitely a good offensive producing game for the Colts, who, they needed to win some games. And, they can't win at home, the Titans. They just can't do it.
And next, they are popping champagne down in Miami because the Minnesota Vikings, who came in the week as the lone undefeated team, did lose to the Philadelphia Eagles 21-10. Really just an ugly, ugly game. These two teams, Alex, came into the game combined with 3 turnovers. During the first quarter, they had a stretch where they combined for 5 straight turnovers in 11 plays.
And the weirdest thing was it was back-to-back, almost. You had the interception to fumble to strip sack to return touchdown that you thought was a return touchdown, but it wasn't. That he ended up throwing a pick. You had the super clean Carson Wentz for the first few games of his career, and, man, did you look at it, and he threw 2 bonehead interceptions. He had a decent game. Bradford also a decent game, but neither of these defenses were quite what they normally are. I mean, the Eagles actually played pretty well defensively also. The Vikings just didn't look like the Vikings of the last 5 weeks. So
definitely, and you obviously, I like teams coming out of bye weeks, but I guess for Minnesota, you can maybe say it stopped some of their momentum because they were playing so well, so good on defense, the offense being really efficient.
Yeah,
and they have the bye week that kind of stunted their growth a little bit. But nevertheless, they still are at 5-1, tied for the best record in the league, so you can't really get on them too bad. So
very true.
Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the still winless Browns 31-17. A huge day on offense for the Bengals. A.J. Green had 169 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy Hill had 168 yards and a touchdown himself on only 9 carries.
Yeah, they both had a very good game. Jeremy Hill, unfortunately, went down with an injury late. Hopefully he's okay to the fantasy owners that have him. Me.
Hand raised.
Yeah, hand
me,
raised.
Me too.
I have him in one league and Giovanni in one other league because I needed a running back while the Panthers were running by and Jonathan Stewart was out, and I picked up Gio, and he played well. But, we always do this. We always kind of have fun with it. All these rookie quarterbacks that played before Jared Goff, the number 1 overall pick.
Now you can throw
Kevin Hogan
from Stanford in that mix.
Kevin Hogan has played before Jared Goff. He threw for 100 yards, 2 interceptions, looked good at times, looked pretty bad at times. But he was the team's leading rusher with 7 rushes for 104. He was in there before Kessler even got hurt.
Look out, Kaepernick. You got a quarterback running presence there in Kevin Hogan to battle with for the most rushing yards as a QB.
Kaepernick.
Okay, moving on.
I'd say, but Hogan was in there as like a little wild card even when Kessler was okay. So they'll see if Kessler looks okay. If not, they have had 6 quarterbacks throw a pass so far in their first 7 games. I think they are the first team to do that.
Unbelievable.
And of course, yes, like you said, they are still winless as they head into their next game. I believe they are facing off against the Jets. Yes, they are. They're facing off against the Jets on Sunday. See if they can finally win one against a team that has not looked great, but has looked better than some might think.
Okay, so moving on, the Detroit Lions get a late Matthew Stafford touchdown to win over the Washington Redskins 20-17. Both teams now sit at 4-3. This is a game I thought Washington would win. Obviously, they had to go ahead score, but then Matthew Stafford comes back and wins for the Lions.
Yeah, these are the kind of games the Lions win. The ones you think they're going to lose, and they're kind of like back and forth, and then they find a way to score. Stafford's always been really good at that.
All right, so the Oakland Raiders improved to 4-0 on the road, all in Eastern time zones with their victory yesterday over the Jacksonville Jaguars 33-16. We had the return of Latavius Murray for Oakland, had a couple of touchdowns, which led them in the backfield.
Yeah, and Bortles did not look good to start this game at all. He looked very bad, as a matter of fact. But he, helped work him back a bit. But this game was out of hand real quick.
Definitely. The Miami Dolphins get yet another huge performance from running back Jay Ajayi. He runs for 200.
Ajayi. I always listen to these analysts.
Jay Ajayi.
No, I always listen to these analysts on NFL.com or like NFL Red Zone. He's like Jay Ajayi. I'm like, no, it's Ajayi.
Okay, well, Jay Ajayi.
That's my boy.
There we go. So he runs for 214 yards. He is the 4th player in NFL history to run for back-to-back 200-yard games. He joins O.J. Simpson. He joins Ricky Williams.
A former Dolphin.
And he joins Earl Campbell.
Former bulldozer. He had thighs the size of a mini Prius.
So they won that game 28-25. A lot of people sort of questioning Rex Ryan's decision to play Deshaun McCoy with a hamstring injury, which he re-aggravated. So
yeah, he
it looks like
did.
He maybe should have sat out yesterday's game, and now he might be out even longer with that hamstring injury. But nevertheless, the Dolphins are on a 2-game winning streak led by Ajayi. There you go.
With the way that LaShawn McCoy runs, I'm not surprised he aggravated. He's very shifty, very cut, stop and go. That's something I feel like can really aggravate a hamstring. So, yeah, very surprising on that factor. And then, we always used to say on the show, but I guess, hey, Jay Ajayi, be OJ. We used to say, don't be OJ.
Don't be OJ, but now he might want to be him.
Yeah. I mean,
at least on the field.
Yeah, be football OJ. No, don't be real life OJ. Anyways, let's move on.
Okay, so the New York Jets defeat the Baltimore Ravens 24-16. The Ravens now on a 4-game losing streak after being 3-0. The storyline here was how the Jets had benched Ryan Fitzpatrick in favor of Geno Smith, and then Geno Smith goes down with a knee injury. So nevertheless, they turn right back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he leads them to victory.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick came in 120-1. He didn't look bad. People are going to say, well, Geno looked good in this game before he got hurt. No, he didn't. He was 4 for 8 for 95 yards. He had a long pass.
To Quincy and Nunwa.
Yeah, he took it 69. Otherwise, he barely had over 40 yards passing on 3 completions. He didn't look great. No, he took 2 sacks, 2 dumb sacks. He wasn't showing me anything that to look, that's not Geno Smith out there. That's a new kid. No, he still looked bad. So it'll be interesting to see if he's healthy enough to play who they'll go with because, Fitzpatrick came in and played decent. You're kind of cutting your luck and waiting for worse to happen with him, I suppose, sometimes. Maybe just keep bringing him off the bench, and we'll see what happens.
This is like a typical Jets thing. Like, Geno Smith said after the game he feels good, so I don't think he's going to – maybe he'll miss a game. I don't think he's going to be out very long. This is a typical Jets thing. Oh, okay, Ryan, you're not playing well. We're going to go to Geno. Oh, wait, hey, Ryan, remember what we said last week? We think we might need you again.
Well, he is the backup. They needed him.
But it's just typical Jets.
Did you hear what Fitzpatrick had to say after the game?
Yeah, he was not very happy.
No, he wasn't. He said that he's used to them losing faith in him, and that's kind of the shut up time. Just be quiet.
Yeah, he was not very happy.
Not the best time to say that.
Nevertheless, the Jets finally do get off the snide and do win a game. They're now at 2-5.
Yeah, now they have 2 wins.
Okay, next, the San Francisco 49ers started off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers up 14-0.
Yeah,
but
this is the most recent Niners, like current day Niners game that I've seen. So like the definition of a 49er game.
But then, obviously, they let the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get back in the game, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win pretty handily, 34-17. We had 96 yards and 2 scores by Mike Evans, Jameis Winston, 269 and 3, and the Niners run defense getting gashed yet again, 154 yards on 26 carries by the product of Oregon State, Jaquiz Rogers.
I like Jaquiz Rogers. I always used to. It's his career high, too. I always used to compare him and Michael James because they came out at the same time. They were same kind of backs, one from Oregon, one from Oregon State. So I was like, hey, guys.
Yeah, a guy who wasn't even on Tampa Bay's roster, let alone a month and a half ago.
Former Falcon.
Just absolutely gashes the Niners,
yeah,
who now sit at 1-6.
Yeah, the Niners, they go up 14-0 in the first quarter and literally don't score again until near the end of the fourth. Like, a friend of mine who lives in my neighborhood, he's a few years younger than me, so I always grew up kind of keeping an eye on him. He's a diehard Niner fan. He goes, man, Kaepernick's back after the first quarter, and I like tweeted him back. I was like, slow it down, bro. You're playing the Buccaneers, and then obviously Kaepernick went on to throw for 143 yards and a touchdown and a pick, and then added 84 yards rushing. But I mean,
yeah,
it's
not
the
terrible.
Buccaneers still.
Not terrible, but for me, the big thing is Kaepernick. I think he was 16 of 34, so he's still throwing under 50%.
Yeah, he was. To be specific, he was 16 of 34. He had a quarterback rating of 56.4.
Yeah,
and he's averaging 4.2 yards a pass in that game at least.
So the problem is still his accuracy. It's not there, and the Niners
it never has been.
Just absolutely need a ton of help.
Like I talked to Jeremiah on the football show, and he thinks that Kaepernick's like this perfect fit for this offense. I'm like, no, bro. Kaepernick.
It's got to be more accurate.
This offense is based off quick reads and accuracy. Neither of those present themselves with Colin Kaepernick's game. So, there you go.
All right, so the San Diego Chargers go on the road and win in overtime over the Atlanta Falcons 33-30. I think, honestly, if you look at the MVP award and you look at the true definition of MVP, I think there's 2 obviously standout people, and that's Andrew Luck and Phillip Rivers, because
in terms of the guys, they're doing it
with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers throws for 371 yards and a touchdown. And he's got no one to throw the ball to. Antonio Gates is old. Hunter Henry's a young rookie, and he's just lining it up with what he has.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at it in the true phrase of the word, the valuable player in terms of this team wouldn't be much without that player in a sense, or the one really like Ben Roethlisberger. You see what happens with the Steelers when he goes down, or you can look at like say that if Phillip Rivers went down, or if you had Tom Brady go, not so much this year, but like we've actually not really in the past, we've seen them do the same thing. You know what I mean, though? A marquee quarterback, like say Drew Brees went down, how valuable they are to that team. And yeah, Phillip Rivers is up there for sure. The way he's played this year. I think Julio Jones is also up there in the way he's played because they'll look at the numbers as opposed to the way you and I are saying it.
Yeah, Jones had 174 yards on 9 catches yesterday, but Phillip Rivers throwing to Tyrell Williams 7 times for 140 yards. Like, who?
Exactly.
Like, you look at T. Williams. Oh, Terrence Williams. Oh, wait, that's guy's on the Cowboys. Never mind. Like, wrong player there.
I said the same thing to myself. I was like, no, I know he's on. Like, what am I doing? So the same thing.
But definitely a big win for the Chargers, who now sit at 3-4. They've been in every game. They could honestly have 1, 2, maybe even 0 losses throughout the season. The AFC West, every team wins, and then you have Denver tonight. So that's probably the best division of football in my eyes. And for Atlanta, a team everyone that thought they were pretty good, were 4-1, now dropped back-to-back games. Still have a good, firm lead. The NFC South is pretty bad this year.
I mean, I don't agree with you that the AFC West is the best division in football, but mainly because you have 2 decent teams at the top, and then you have 2 bad teams at the bottom. So,
I mean, the Raiders are good. You have Denver. You have Kansas City. San Diego's capable of winning, as we saw. So it's
capable of winning, but they
competitive.
lose a lot of games.
Definitely. All right, moving on. Tom Brady continues doing Tom Brady things, and the Patriots defeat Landry Jones and the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-16. LeGarrette Blount, big game, 127 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Steelers couldn't capitalize over turnovers. You had an early fumble to start the game off by, I can't think of his name right now, Kevin Hogan? No, Kevin Hogan, sorry. The other one that he just got from the Bills.
Chris Hogan.
Chris Hogan, thank you, yeah. And then a fumble on a punt by none other than Julian Edelman in the game as well. Couldn't capitalize off any turnovers, and penalties were definitely an issue for them as well. But not a bad performance from Landry Jones, and he had 81 yards rushing from Le'Veon Bell. Add that to 68 total yards receiving. And then Antonio Brown actually had a pretty good day. Sans Ben Roethlisberger, 7 for 106, did hurt his quad, which he had like any of the bye week coming up for some time to heal that up as well.
Definitely. So the New England Patriots improved to 6-1. As I said, tied for the best record in the league. And then the last game was last night's Sunday night matchup. Went into the week saying this is probably the matchup of the weekend. And, well, if you're a fan of defense, then you were obviously buzzing. But other than that, there's not much to talk about. The Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals end in a 6-6 tie in overtime. We had both field goal kickers miss chip shots for the game-winning field goals.
Both good kickers, too.
Yeah, Chandler Catanzaro misses a 32-yarder, and then Steven Hauschka misses a 28-yarder with 7 seconds left in overtime.
Did you see?
Oh man, Bruce Arians after the game was.
Did you see? Yeah, he was mad. But no, I was going to say, did you see his the coach's face? Not Arians.
Carroll.
Pete Carroll. You see his face? He's just the biggest dumb.
Just chewing gum, just chewing along. I mean, Steven Hauschka's obviously both these kickers are pretty good. You mentioned, but Steven Hauschka, one of the best in the league, a 28-yarder, literally just shorter than an extra point, and he didn't miss it. He absolutely completely missed it. He missed the entire.
Yanked it, man.
He hooked it so bad. He missed the entire netting. He didn't even hit the net.
Yeah,
the ball went into the
net
stands
completely. Yeah.
So I mean. I guess the lone bright spot in this game was David Johnson for the Arizona Cardinals. Another big day on the ground and receiving, 113 yards rushing to go along with 58 receiving.
Yeah, and you're definitely right about the defense because both these teams on their drives in overtime got within the 15 of their own in going into score. And I'm like, how did you not score? How did you not?
I have no idea.
Like the Seahawks got into the 10. I was like, dude, come on.
The Seahawks did not get the ball past midfield until 4 minutes left in the game, and that came on a blocked punt. So the Arizona defense showed up to play, Seattle defense as well, but Arizona's probably a little more impressive. But nevertheless, they end in a 6-6 tie. This is not the Mariners against the Diamondbacks, okay? This was a football game. I guess you can say, even though it was a tie for both teams, I'd say it's a win for Seattle. You stay at 4-1. It was a road game. Arizona still sits at 3-1 now. So I guess I'd give the edge to Seattle with the tie, but still, both teams are going to be disappointed. It seems like every year you see like one tie. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and then that brings us to tonight's game. The Houston Texans, who are at 4-2, battle the Denver Broncos as well at 4-2. The game is in Denver. As we mentioned, the return of Brock Osweiler, a guy who kind of turned the other way at Denver's contract and took the money, went to Houston.
He said, Psh, no.
He's like, I already got my ring. Now I'm taking the cash.
Uh-huh.
I'm
going to get the big bucks.
So I am going to take the Broncos tonight.
Played
pretty bad last week against San Diego, but they had extra time to prepare. Their defense is still really good, and Houston, their offense is pretty bad. They have Lamar Miller, who's pretty nice. DeAndre Hopkins, who can make plays, but Osweiler is just capable of making turnovers.
Their offense is very up and down because of Osweiler and the turnovers. What I want to see is I want the Broncos to come out and be like, you know what? Hey, Mr. Moneybags, here's that undrafted, or that 7th rounder from, that was your backup last year. Watch him outplay you.
Just torch him.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Broncos on that too.
Yeah, so I'll take Denver. Obviously, you will recap the game tomorrow on the show to end the NFL Week 7
You got
slate.
that right.
All right, so let's take our first break at the Golden State Media Concept Sports Podcast. Coming out of the break, we have a World Series matchup. Finally, we have Game 1 tomorrow in Cleveland, and we're going to talk about it right here after the break at the Golden State Media Concept Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. So like I was saying, obviously I have the computer open when I do this kind of things. It's not all of the stuff comes from my head. Even though
we have to read a few things.
Yeah, even though most of it does. A lot of the football stuff especially. But I was looking and in one of the I think he's an analyst. His name's Bill Barnwell, maybe a writer.
Great name.
He said, just click to rewatch the Cardinals Seahawks on Game Pass, and the app said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And then it clicked and said yes, and it said, "For real though?" Question mark.
I mean,
it's like, do you sure
game,
you want to watch this again?
After that game, oh man, like I said, if you're a fan of defenses, then you thought this was the best game of the weekend. But aside from that, like imagine paying to go to that game as like a Cardinals fan or a Seahawks fan, just paying to go to that game.
And like at the beginning, you're like, "Oh, cool, overtime! Like, whoa, we can get like a cool walk-off win for the Cardinals." No,
just utter disappointment.
Yeah, I guarantee fans went home like.
And then like, here's my question: is like, Steven Hauschka misses that field goal, like. Do you, like, cheer a tie because it could have been a loss? Or, like...
Yes?
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, still, it's like, like, this is not soccer.
Yeah, you said something about baseball earlier. I was like, dude, baseball, you can't tie in baseball.
No, but I'm saying, like, 6-6. You would think that's, like, a baseball score. But
yeah, no, I get you.
Kind of like this weekend, we had Colorado and Stanford, and the game ended 10-5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is not a baseball score, by the way.
Uh-huh.
All right, but anyway, speaking of baseball, that is something we are going to be talking about, and that is the World Series is set, because in Game 6, the Chicago Cubs did clinch over the LA Dodgers 5-0.
In convincing fashion, yep. It was Kershaw, again, we've talked about it before, he's has trouble in the postseason, and he's pitched well this year up until that game, and gave up 2 in the first, 1 in the second, And from that point, they were on their way. They scored 2 more, 1 in the fourth, 1 in the fifth, and they didn't need another run because Mr. Hendricks allowed 2 hits in the entire game, along with some good work from their bullpen. He went 7, pretty much 7 full, about 7.1, and then Chapman finished it off.
Definitely. So Kershaw goes 5 innings. As you mentioned, gives up 4 earned runs, 5 total. He gives up 7 hits. He gives up 2 runs, one of them to Anthony Rizzo. And that turnaround he's had since Game 3. So Game 4, Game 5, and Game 6.
Him and Addison Russell.
Definitely. They've been the sort of the difference in those 3 games for the Cubs. Mm-hmm. Anthony Rizzo with at least 2 hits in all 3 of those games.
And he had another home
Game
run,
5, and
too.
Game 4 had a home run. Yeah, definitely. Kershaw got lit up. He gave up 3 runs within the first couple innings. Kyle Hendricks, his dominance at home this year has been absolutely spectacular. He goes 7 1/3, as you mentioned, strikes out 6, and then Chapman comes in for an inning and 2/3 to close the door.
I'd be interested to see I forget what Russell's average was before these last few games, but I think it was like under 100.
I know that Rizzo going into game number 4 was hitting 2 for 26 in the whole postseason.
Well, he's currently sitting at 320.
And Russell, I don't think even had a hit.
Yeah, he whatever he was at, he jumped it to 273. So, I mean, he's doing work. He's making it happen.
So the Cubs are back into the World Series.
Yep.
It's been a while. Obviously, we know about how long it has been since they won, but they sort of eased the pressure against the Giants, eased the pressure here against the Dodgers. Obviously, they were down 2-1 in that series. So now they come back, and they are going to be in the World Series against the Cleveland Indians, who clinched earlier in the week on Wednesday. We're going to be having Game 1 tomorrow from Cleveland, Progressive Field. Think about this, Alex. For the city of Cleveland, with the exception of the Browns, obviously because we know about them, we talked about in the last segment, on Tuesday you will have the Cavaliers facing the Knicks in their season opener. They're going to be raising the championship banner. And then right across the street, you have the Cleveland Indians hosting Game 1 of the World Series for the first time in franchise history.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a big day for the city. And I mentioned to you before the show started, too, so this not only is this the first time that these two are facing one another in the World Series. It's been a long time for both these teams. The last time that the Cubs were in a World Series was 1945, and the last time the Indians were in a World Series was 97. Last time these teams won it, 1948 for the Indians, and obviously a very documented 1908 for the Cubs there.
So we're going to be having a World Series winner between one of these two teams for the first time in 68 years. That's if the Indians win. If the Cubs, it's obviously over 100 years.
108.
Well, yeah, that 108 is over 100 years. Bless you.
I just was being specific. Yeah, it's allergies, bro.
But definitely a great storyline, especially for baseball, because a sport where kind of struggling to get some of the young demographic. I think this is probably the best case scenario for baseball.
Yeah.
With everything Cleveland's doing, with everything that the Cubs have been all year and their sort of drought, I guess you can say this is the biggest media revenue sort of ratings setup, I guess. So I think this is probably a good setup.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you know who Bob Uecker is?
No, but you can probably tell me.
You ever seen the movie Major League?
Oh, the announcer, right?
There is a petition launched by fans to replace Joe Buck with Bob Uecker or Uecker. I don't know how to say it for the World Series broadcast. Uecker, yeah.
It's Uecker.
There was also the fans trying to get Charlie Sheen to throw out the first pitch.
I saw that, but he's not doing it.
No, he wants to, but they said they didn't announce who was going to do it.
Yeah,
I think they said a former player.
They said he's not doing it, but that would be great. Like Wild Thing, Rick Vaughn out there just throwing out the first pitch, and he puts on the glasses with the skull on them. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, you don't know how excited. I love that movie.
I love number one.
I love all three of them.
I loved number 1 and number 2. I wasn't a big fan of 3, but 1 and 2.
I don't know why I like 3 so much.
1 and 2 are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I love those movies. 1 obviously being the best. You have him. You have Corbin Burnson. So many good people in that movie. Willie Mays Hayes, Pedro Serrano. I like the second one.
I love number 2 with I forget his name, but the Japanese guy.
Yeah, when they said we got somebody from the Giants, he goes, "You traded for somebody from the Giants?" He goes, "Yeah, an outfielder." He goes, "Who?" And he starts
the Tokyo Giants.
Yeah, he starts listing off these names. He's like, "No, wrong Giants." And you see the Tokyo Giants thing, and it's just
it's like Hiroshi Kamikaze Tanaka.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what it is.
Nice, man.
I mean, I've seen it at least a few times. Like
I love
really
those
being
movies,
like 10 or 11.
And
I should say,
just so you know, as of right now, Major League is streaming on Netflix for those who want to watch it. Now, on the unfortunate side, Rookie of the Year, featuring the Cubs and the rocket-throwing Rowan Gardner.
Or Rosenbagger.
Or Frohenfrogner.
Yeah. Or Rowenbringer, or whatever. He just says
that game. That movie is not being streamed currently, unfortunately. Netflix is not taking advantage of that with none other than Chet. Was it the Rocket?
The Rocket Chet Stedman, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
It's been a while since I've seen Rookie of the Year.
Played by Gary Busey, before people knew he was Crazy Busey.
It's been a while since I've seen Rookie of the Year, but nevertheless, still a good movie. So definitely some compelling storylines, not just on the field, but in the movie scene as well. Major League Rookie of the Year, Cubs, Indians. It's going to be a great series. Obviously, you'll preview Game 1 tomorrow, but who do you think is going to win the series, just real quick?
Man, I don't know. You have the best team in baseball all year facing the best team in the postseason so far this year. This is going to be a tough one. I feel like I'm not going to really be able to get a good idea on it throughout, at least after 2 games, once I see how these teams play each other, because it's always weird when you look at once you get to the World Series, because you have 2 teams doing 2 different things. You know, you have either one batting with a DH, and it's more so usually effective to the team that has to have a pitcher bat that normally, the AL team that normally would have a DH. It's usually more effective then. We saw that a few years ago with the Giants, who, Pablo Sandoval, they just designated him to be their DH because even though he got better in the field his last few years there, they just put him there and let him DH, and then we saw what happened, with him in that World Series against the Tigers. Little things like that. You have teams that have guys like, say, the Cubs. They have so many people on this team that could play different positions, and they're going to have an issue next year with just a embarrassment of riches issue. So when it comes down to that, they can have literally anybody. There's so many people whether they have the same thing with the Dodgers. Dodgers could have done it too. They could have had Puig done it and just had Reddick play right field. So many different ways. So that's going to be interesting to see. I really don't know who to give it to. I think the pitching matchup still goes to the Cubs in favor of them. So I think if there's only one thing I can give in that aspect, it's that. So if that's the case, I suppose the Cubs. But again, I'm probably going to have to give it a couple games to really – and I'm not trying to cheat it and be like, whoever's up by 2 at that point, be like, oh, yeah, it's them.
Dude,
my hope is it's 1-1 by then, and I get an idea how these teams might play one another.
I'm totally with you on this one. I think the National League teams in the World Series have a huge advantage because of the DH rule. When they go there, they get an extra hitter. When the Indians go to Wrigley Field, they're going to be losing a hitter, which they normally have the DH. So I think that totally gives an edge to the National League team. When I look at this matchup, the Indians, you mentioned, the best team in the postseason, they only lost one game all postseason, and that was game number 4 to Toronto. The Cubs have been the best team all year, and I'd say they have the pitching matchup and the starting rotation by far. But the Indians have pitched incredible this year and in the postseason. And then you look at the bullpens, I think they're really similar. You have Chapman for the Cubs. Andrew Miller was the ALCS MVP as a reliever. He only gave up 4 hits in 25 innings this whole entire postseason so far with 17 strikeouts. Mm-hmm. So he's a stud since they traded for him at the deadline from the Yankees. I really don't know where to go with this, dude. Something tells me I want to pick the Indians because they're the hot team right now. Mm-hmm. But how can you bet against the Cubs when they've been the best team all year? So I really don't know. But you know what? I picked Boston and I picked Toronto. And the Indians beat both of them. So I'm going to pick the Indians in the World Series. Terry Francona's won a couple of them with the Red Sox. I'm going to pick the Indians, man.
Yeah, neither of these teams played each other in the regular season, so you can't try to base it off anything like that. I respect that. I don't know who to pick, so I can't. I'm not going to. I'm not going to pick anybody.
Okay. Game number 1, as we mentioned, is tomorrow. You will preview that matchup. We have Corey Kluber, the former AL Cy Young Award winner for the Indians. He's on the mound for Game 1. The Cubs have not announced a Game 1 starter, obviously. That news will probably break maybe today, maybe tomorrow.
I would imagine sometime today.
I would imagine it would be John Lester. He's going to be pitching on 4 days rest, which is pretty normal.
Pretty much a full day, yeah. Full set of rest.
So I would imagine he would be the Game 1 starter, but yet we'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And then one cool thing I liked before we take our last break real quick, Dexter Fowler will be the person to, I believe it was Dexter Fowler, will be the person to hit first for the Cubs. He's the leadoff hitter. He will hit first in the first game, obviously, because they are the away team. They said it's only fitting for somebody of all that class to do so in the circumstance because the last time the Cubs were in the World Series, African-American people weren't even allowed to play.
Boom.
And he said, wow, that is an amazing thing. He said, I'm going to carry that as a catalyst. That's a big thing, and he's really proud of that. So that is really cool that I read that.
Definitely great news there.
Yeah. So let's take our last break. We'll come back, and we'll cover the AP Top 25 real quick, talk about some teams moving and grooving and hopping and jumping. So we'll take that last break and be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Going to be rounding out the show, talking some college football as well as updating the new AP Top 25 poll. We had a big jump and a big change at the former number 2 team, which was the Ohio State Buckeyes. They, in prime time on Saturday, lose to unranked Penn State 24-21.
Huge win for Penn State.
Crazy game. Ohio State had the lead. They were driving. They attempted a field goal to have it blocked and ran back all the way for a touchdown with 4 minutes left, which gave Penn State the lead and ended up winning the game for them.
Yeah, what a way to lose there.
Crazy.
Then we look at the countdown and not countdown. I always say countdown. The poll, the top 25, and clearly we still have the number 1 intact at Alabama at 1. Michigan moves up from 3 to 2. You have pretty much with Ohio State moving it just everybody dropped down into that next spot. They moved up. So
Right.
3-2, 4-3 with Clemson, and then Washington went 5-4. That's definitely a team that I could see, a Louisville type team maybe leapfrogging, seeing as Washington has such a weak schedule this year. Louisville moved up from 7-5, and then we now have where Ohio State fell from 2-6 now. Nebraska moved up. Pretty much a lot of the top 10 moved up one. Nebraska from 8-7, and Baylor up from 9-8. And then we had Texas A&M fall after their loss to Alabama from 6-9.
And then rounding out the top 10, we have West Virginia, who stayed undefeated with their impressive win at home over TCU. You mentioned Alabama. They beat Texas A&M 33-14 pretty convincingly. Everyone talked prior to the game like, 19 points is the spread. That's a lot to give up. What did Alabama win by? 19 points. So, yet again, Vegas proves that that's why they are paid to do this and we aren't. So
yeah, I mean, somebody's got to pay them.
Exactly. So Vegas, yet again, gets it right on the button. So Ohio State losing, they're dropping from 2-6. But you know what? This is not a terrible loss for them because, in my eyes, they really do still control their own destiny.
Yeah, especially if they can beat Michigan.
Exactly. They keep winning all their games. If they beat Michigan there at the end of the season, that would put them in the Big Ten title game. If they win that, then I still think, even with only just the one loss, they're still in a very, very good position to get to that college football playoff because I'd say the only exception would be if you have Bama go undefeated, which I think is going to happen. If you have Clemson go undefeated, which I think their only tough game is probably Florida State left.
Yeah.
But they will have that game at home, so that's not too bad. They will have the advantage there. Florida State struggled. And then if Washington finish undefeated, that's 3 undefeated teams. And then maybe if you have the winner of Baylor and the winner of West Virginia go undefeated, and then you'd have 4 undefeated teams. Do Ohio State jump one of those undefeated teams? I mean,
I could see, like I said, Washington getting jumped.
Even if Washington goes undefeated, they win
because of their strength of schedule. When they were in the top 10, and the top 10 was like it was 3 weeks ago, they were the 8th worst in terms of strength of schedule. Continue. I'll mention who Washington has remaining.
Okay,
I'll
so
give you an idea on
because here's the
this
question:
garbage of a schedule they have.
Here's the question: their schedule was pretty bad. Their non-conference schedule featured like Rutgers, Idaho, and I think Portland State. So pretty bad.
Yeah, I'll read it to you in a minute.
And then the Pac-12 is probably not as good at the top of the conference as the Big Ten is, but they're still undefeated. They won their conference title game
last year.
No, I'm saying this year. Say they go undefeated.
Oh,
and they win their conference title game. How can you jump Ohio State above them when they're undefeated and they won their title just as Ohio State did, even though they have one loss?
We saw more of a significant jump with the TCU Baylor one a few years ago. I mean, look at it this way: Rutgers, Idaho, Portland State, Arizona, Stanford. Even though Stanford was on their
Stanford's not nearly.
They were on their fall. They were 7 then, but then they went on to lose to Washington State also, Oregon and Oregon State. Those are their wins so far. They have Utah, who is ranked 17th, but I think they are a better team.
Tough matchup next.
Yeah, I do think they're a better team. They have Cal, they have SC, they have Arizona State, and then they finish against Washington State for the Apple Cup at the end of the year. Excuse me. If you ask me, their next 2 toughest matchups is Utah and Washington State, purely because Utah is a good team this year. Washington State plays them every year, interstate rival. It's a different kind of game. Washington State is currently 4-0 in the division. They're 5-2. They had another slow start, or they could be 7-0 also. So even if they go undefeated, this is a weak schedule. It really is.
It is.
And I could definitely see them getting jumped, especially by a team like Louisville or Ohio State.
I mean, I do think Washington will probably lose one game on that schedule. You mentioned,
maybe. I mean, I think they're definitely winnable games for them. I think they'll blow through Oregon State. I think they can beat Utah. I think they can beat Cal, SC, Arizona State. I think they can beat Washington State also. So, but yeah, like you said, you never know. Every day is a day that you can be beat in college football. So
exactly. So, I mean, honestly, I do think Ohio State still controls their own destiny. I think not Ohio, but I think Alabama and Clemson will probably finish undefeated. I think Washington probably lose one game, and then you kind of have that, Ohio State, if they lose to Michigan, they're done. Michigan's in. But if they beat Michigan and then win the Big Ten championship, I think they're in. The only thing is, like I said, if there's 4 undefeated teams, which I don't really see happening, I think the Big 12, with their lack of a conference title game, definitely hurts them. I don't think they're nearly as good of a conference as some of these others. So I think we'll see at least Baylor and West Virginia lose one game. I think they'll both lose one game. So
I get you on that. Yeah.
I think Ohio State still controls its own destiny. Louisville's still kind of lurking, but I think they need help because they're not. Unless Clemson falters and loses 2 games, they're not going to be winning the ACC. So I would still put them as a long shot in. I realize they're ranked 5 right now, but the rankings right now don't really matter. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But every week now, for the last couple of weeks, we've seen a big team lose. So Houston lost a couple of weeks to Navy, and they actually lost again to SMU pretty bad just last week. So they dropped out of the top 25 completely. Yeah.
Real quick before we get going, some other just notables. Boise State, the lone Mountain West representative, moving from 14 to 13 there. You had Auburn jumping from 21 to 15. You had Utah, again, we just mentioned, moving from 19 to 17. LSU coming up 6 spots from 25 to 19. Western Michigan holding tight at 20. And then you have Navy as well, sticking around there at 22, followed by Penn State and Colorado, both formerly unranked, as well as Virginia Tech. Like I mentioned, Washington State playing well. They got some votes there to get into the conversation, as well as Oklahoma State and Arkansas. And then the teams to fall out, as you said, Houston, Arkansas as well, and Ole Miss.
Yeah, Auburn, a huge home win, a 56-3 victory.
That's a decent win.
Over Arkansas, a team that was ranked 17th at the time. So big win.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great week in college football, and we'll have to see where we go from here to another really good week coming up. The coaches' poll is almost identical this week to, in a lot of ways, to the top 25. But this is when it really starts counting. We did the 25 the first few weeks, and they're dumb those first few weeks because there's not a lot of movement, or there's excessive movement. So it's definitely now where they're a lot easier to take a look at.
Yeah, we definitely have a firm grip on what teams are really good now, so we have a good idea.
Yes, sir. But I think that's it for us today, yeah.
That is it, yes.
As always, I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is my lone day. I will preview and recap. I'll do football and preview the World Series Game 1, Cubs-Indians. It's going to be a big one there. And I'll talk anything and everything related to the world of sports. Ben will be back on Wednesday along with Anthony. Until then, though, for Anthony, I'm Alex.
I am Ben.
I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you Wednesday.
And you guys have a good rest of your day. And remember, don't go being no OJ.
Except for J.A.J.I.
You almost had it.
What?
You almost had that.
J.A.J.I.?
Ajayi.
Okay, listen, I don't think he really cares.
You'll get there.
J.A.J.I.
No, that's my boy. Bud. We will see you guys. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow. You have a good rest of your day and enjoy your sports.
And learn J.A.J.I.'s name.
One day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.